And actually, no, that's way into treasuries. And you might be thinking, well, hold on. What if everybody takes all that money and invests it and buys stocks with it? Then all that money leaves treasuries and goes into something else instead. And actually, no, that's a fundamental misunderstanding that many people have about the way money works. Money never goes into anything or out of anything. When any transaction is made, the dollars go from one person to another person's account. When you buy Bitcoin from somebody, dollars are leaving your bank or brokerage account and going into somebody else's bank or brokerage account. But the dollars, same number of dollars, still exist. When you buy gold, dollars are leaving your bank or brokerage account and going into somebody else's bank or brokerage account, and the gold is going under your ownership. But the dollars still exist. They just move locations. If you sell shares of SPY, the shares leave your brokerage account to go get placed into somebody else's, whoever bought them from you, and the dollars leave their brokerage account and land in your brokerage account instead. The same number of dollars exist. And behind the scenes, those dollars are most of the time just going to be going into treasuries, T-bills, notes, or bonds. And that's why this chart, money market fund balances, usually just goes up. This is not a sign of cash on the sidelines. Oftentimes, this is just collateral. And so when we look at the $9 trillion of debt that the US government has to pay back in 2026, the vast majority of that will be automatically rolled over because they're going to pay back trillions of that into money market fund holdings as those T-bills mature, and that cash will still be in the money market funds, and it will just be then loaned right back to the US government by purchasing more T-bills. The reality is most of that $9 trillion will automatically be rolled over. No one will be the wiser. Pair that with the fact that the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates at the short end, which disproportionately impacts T-bills, and ended QT just now, and has restarted QE by buying bills and short-term notes, means that now there's new money being created, coming into existence, that is going directly to help this problem out next year. It is a new source of borrowing for the US government. So while you will probably see going into 2026, many people start to panic about this and say, hey, the government's going to default. There's not enough money for them to borrow. The reality is that most of the dollars that they currently owe back next year are going to be rolled right back over into new debt without anybody even knowing, because it happens behind the scenes. So that's not the problem here. The next thing people think is an issue here is the cost of the interest on the debt, because we all remember what the Fed did during 2020, slamming interest rates down to zero, and we know the government borrowed a lot at zero interest rates. And as the government has rolled that over, the cost of the national debt has gone up because the interest overall on the national debt has gotten more expensive. So let's take a look at how much the US government has to pay in interest on its debt right now and what this next year will do to that in terms of the cost of that interest. Right now, we're going to be looking at the United States Congress Joint Economic Committee Debt Dashboard. You can find this at jec.senate.gov. And you can see I'm recording this on December 5th, 2025. And that's where all these numbers are up to date. Scrolling down on the page, you will find this chart called the average interest rate by security type. If you look at the entire national debt, it has an average interest rate right now of 3.382%. The bills, which remember is stuff that matures in 1 year or less, has an average interest rate of 3.983% right now. Notes, which are 2 to 10 year loans, have an average interest rate of 3.13%, and bonds, which are 20 or 30 year, have an average interest rate of 3.346% right now. So now let's work backwards and compare that to what the current rates are if they wanted to borrow at those time frames. So for bonds, that's 20 or 30 year. Remember, we're comparing that to 3.34%. Well, the current interest rate on the 30-year treasury is 4.79%. And so if the government right now has any 30-year treasuries maturing and they roll that over into new 30-year treasuries, they'll be paying like a full percent more in interest, which in terms of the cost, that's a 25% increase or a little bit more. And the 20 years no better, it's at 4.76% right now, compared to their average long-term debt cost of 3.3%. So of the $9 trillion that is maturing in 2026, If any of this is long-term debt and they're trying to roll that over into the same maturity, then they're going to be paying more on that. But as you'll see, that's not what they're going to be doing. Notes, that's 2 to 10 year. We're seeing their current average cost on notes is 3.13% right now. The current 2-year yield is 3.5%, which again is more expensive. So if a 2-year matures and they roll that over into a new 2-year, then that debt gets more expensive. And the 10-year is 4.1%. So if they've got a 10-year that matures and they roll it over to a new 10-year, that gets a lot more expensive. So from 2 years all the way to 30 years, any of that debt that they're holding right now is cheaper than what they could get if they issue new debt at those maturities right now. If that makes no sense, just look at your mortgage rate. And let's say you've got a 4% mortgage rate. If you went out and refinanced that to a new mortgage right now, you'd be paying like 6%. That'd be a bad deal. You're going to pay a lot more for that new mortgage. So